I don't care if you make $1 million or $1 a year, like being intentional with your money. I think you guys had Jesse on from YNAB.
Yeah.
And then after that, kind of going through that financial order of operations, paying off that higher interest debt, getting to obviously a TSP match as a non-negotiable for military members, and then moving on to things like the Roth IRA, increasing that TSP. And then, when it comes to down payments on houses, if that's something that you aspire to be a homeowner, that's something that is definitely in that order somewhere. I think just knowing where your money's going, spending less than you earn, and investing the difference. Like I think Jeremy from Personal Finance Club, who I'm a huge fan of, says that really well. But like if you just do that, you're going to be better than 95% of people.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual Podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Hello, podcast listeners. Today on the podcast, we have a conversation with Erik Baskin. Erik is a 2018 graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, but we won't hold that against him. Erik is the founder of Baskin Financial Planning, a fee-only financial planning service for military families and veterans. He also founded BLUFfinance.com, a low-cost alternative to standard financial advising specifically for military service members. Erik worked as a hospital administrator while on active duty and has an economics degree from the Academy. Today, we talk about starting a business while on active duty, things to think about before you transition off of active duty, and military travel hacking. Erik, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Spencer. Happy to be on here and been a long-time listener and just happy to have a good conversation with you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to start with military entrepreneurship and the idea of the $100 startup. When were you first exposed to the idea of the $100 startup, and how did that eventually end up changing your life?
Yeah, so I started getting deep into reading a lot of books in 2017. I think it was junior year at the Academy. After I graduated the Academy and started my first job at FE Warren doing hospital administration, I liked my job, but like at the same time, like wanted to get more information, learn about business, learn about finance, learn about just life. And one of the books I stumbled upon was $100 Startup by Chris Gilliboo. I probably just butchered his last name. I don't know if that's how you say it, but something that he said in that book like just struck a light bulb for me. He said, find something that people come to you naturally for, something that you're passionate about and that people might be willing to pay for. So like the equation that he puts in that book, I've still got the note back from whenever I read this in 2018, passion plus skill, wherever that crosses with problem plus marketplace, like that equals an opportunity. And for me, like, my whole life growing up, I've always been really interested in money and investing in the stock market. At the Academy, my friends, my teammates, I was kind of the go-to guy. Like they'd be like, hey, like, what's this Roth IRA thing? What are these Vanguard funds that I should invest in? That kind of thing. And so people would always come to me for that. And it never really clicked with me that I would go be an advisor. I never really thought that growing up and even at the Academy. I had like 20 business ideas on a OneNote. I could still pull it up today. I've got business ideas starting like, I hate waiting to pay at a restaurant. So like reduce that friction, community service, trying to privatize community service. I had like all these crazy ideas. And it wasn't until I read this book that I was like, whoa, personal finance. That's something people have money problems. People need help with. I'm really super interested in it. And people naturally come to me for that. So that led me to go research, what is it like to be an advisor? What's the landscape like out there? You got these big firms like Morgan Stanley and Edward Jones and all that. Then you've also got this thing called a fee-only financial planner and an RIA, Registered Investment Advisory. And there's this group out here called XY Planning Network that helps people start their own firms from scratch. So I kind of went down this rabbit hole of researching everything there was to know about that and starting an RIA and taking the Series 65. So I went and did that in 2019, took that Series 65, and then was like, what do I do now? So XYPN said, do the CFP designation. You should probably go take your test. At that time, I had 4 years left on my Service Academy commitment. I wanted to go start a firm, but they're like, hey, education's probably a good idea. So I went and got the exam taken care of and the education. And at the same time, also did my MBA online from University of Nebraska. And that's kind of, I don't know, those two things don't go exactly together. And I don't really need an MBA to be a financial planner. But at that point, my firm and getting out and doing this and all that I'm doing now was kind of very far off. So I saw the MBA as almost like an insurance policy. Hey, if this doesn't work out and I stay in the military as a hospital administrator, or maybe I get out and do hospital administrating on the outside, an MBA is probably a good thing to have. And I had, the fortune or disfortune, if that's the word, of not being with my wife at the time and being alone in Cheyenne, Wyoming in an apartment and having time to do this after work and on the weekends on my free time. So that worked out well for me. So set up the firm, finally passed the CFP, got the MBA, and was able to launch the firm in 2021. We're coming up on almost 2 years now, and we'll be separating this September 30th to go full-time into the firm.
Awesome. And so you set up all this on active duty. Did it ever interfere with your job, or what was it like having this side hustle? Was there ever any conflict with your bosses or coworkers or anything like that?
Yeah, I was very fortunate always to be very upfront with my bosses, and they were always super supportive of what I was doing. One of my bosses gave me a day off to go study for that CFP exam and was like writing an email to the whole group congratulating me for passing after I passed. So they've always just been really supportive of what I've been doing. I think they've appreciated how forthright I've been with everything that I'm working on and keeping them informed and in the loop. It hasn't, affected, obviously it's a lot of work at night and on the weekends, but hasn't, I don't think, affected work performance. And those two things haven't interfered with each other. So I think that's been a good balance. Starting a business, as you guys know, and doing things on your own time on the weekends and at night, definitely rewarding, but also a lot of work to do while you're on active duty.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing stories of military entrepreneurship because it's something that I went through when I was on active duty, and I did the research and kind of like looked at, okay, what are you like actually supposed to do here if you're going to have a side hustle or a side job? And actually, the best resource I found on this is a website, themilitaryDollar.com. And she's got I don't actually remember the author's name. She goes anonymously on the site. I think she was in OSI or something in the Air Force, but she has a whole page on there for every branch, basically what you're actually supposed to do if you're going to have some kind of side hustle in the military. It basically comes down to you have to get your commander's approval and you have to have JAG sign off on it. But the overarching themes are you don't want to do anything that's going to bring discredit to the military service that you're a part of, and it can't interfere with your work performance. So going and working at the strip club on the weekends, depending on how good you are, might interfere with both your work performance and discredit on the service. But if you're running an OnlyFans, maybe not. That's for JAG to decide, not me. A couple other things you mentioned there, Eric, was getting your CFP designation. And we actually had a certified financial planner, Rob Shea, on the podcast. That was episode number 49. I liked your story of going through all the CFP stuff while you were stationed in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It's kind of actually the origin stories of Military Money Manual. I was stationed in Altus, Oklahoma without my spouse. And after playing, I think it was about 100 hours of Skyrim on the Xbox, I was like, okay, I gotta do something else with my time. And that's when I ended up buying the domain for militarymoneymanual.com. And then finally, the last kind of thought I had where you got this idea to create this company was you did something that was easy for you, but hard for others. And I think that's like the easiest way to, start any kind of business or any kind of consultancy is what do people naturally come to you for? If you're the sports betting guy, maybe you should start a sports betting website. Not necessarily taking bets, but just, commentary on, hey, this weekend, like I would play these lines in these games. If you're the person who, people are always coming to for car trouble, they need to change the oil in their car, there's an opportunity right there, to either set up some kind of side hustle, or maybe you're just known as the car guy and that's kind of your side gig right there. So I think that for the entrepreneurial minded military service member, you don't necessarily have to completely separate from active duty, to beta test and to figure out, hey, is there profit potential here, or could this potentially work? You can test stuff, you can experiment while you're on active duty. And if it's working for you, then it might be a good indication like, okay, maybe I can go to the Guard or the Reserve and, complete my service that way. Or maybe I'm ready for a clean cut and I'm just going to go out and be my own boss.
Yeah, I think you nailed that on the head, Spencer. Like, today's economy, definitely in 2023, it is not the same as it was 20 years ago. Like so many tools are available to us, whether it's Twitter, or LinkedIn, or whatever platform, as well as courses out there, lots of creators that are showing you step by step, hey, this is your topic, this is your niche, this is how you start posting about it, this is how you create a newsletter around that and start to create offerings that you can get paid for. Like it applies to anything. It could be basket weaving, financial planning is a little bit different. Some regulation definitely involved with that I had to go through, but could be any number of different fields, and definitely an awesome opportunity for anybody in the military to go and try their hand at being an entrepreneur while on active duty. This is the kind of thing that you can do nights and weekends or over your lunch hour and at least test the waters, like you said, and see what's out there for you.
Yeah, for a lot of the content on my site was produced when I was on deployments. We might fly for 24 hours, but guess what? You get a guaranteed minimum 16 hours rest afterwards, and usually would get a little bit more than that. And so after you sleep for a couple hours, you go to the gym, you eat, and there's nothing else to do in a deployed location. You might as well get some work done. And with the power of the internet today, if you have any kind of inclination to start a online business or to start a business that you can conduct remotely, I think you're wasting your time if you're not doing that in your own free time while you're on active duty and setting yourself up for when you get out. So Erik, I went through the military separation process last year. I left active duty after 12 years. And I would say that I was probably about 70% prepared for life on the outside. There was definitely a lot of gaps in my knowledge and in my preparation for civilian life. Do you have any advice that you would give to someone who's approaching separation? And I know you personally are also getting close to your own separation. What are you doing to get ready for it?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely, separation is, I think, a time where complexity goes up tenfold compared to when you're active. Like there's so many things that are taken care of for you, and all of a sudden it's not, and you might be moving and there's a lot going on. So I think some of the top things that I think are important would be cash flow, obviously, very important. Projections, ideally, maybe for the next 12 months. Your expenses are going to change. Your income's probably going to change. So having plans to plug the gaps or plans to put excess funds to good use before they disappear, because we know they do if you don't plan for it. So cash flow projections are big. And then one, I think that is like very time sensitive when you're separating or retiring or whatever, is life insurance and disability insurance for that matter. But life insurance for sure. Many people are going to submit a VA disability claim when they separate or retire. And that can definitely affect your insurability, or at least the health class at which you will be insured through a private insurance policy. So getting life insurance, maybe like what you'll need for the next 20 years, in place before you go down that, last 6 months, I'm going to submit my VA claim. Before you go to get to that, getting life insurance in place. I did a blog post on this in January, I believe, kind of compared, hey, if I was to get insurance in place like even 3 years before I need it, and I can get insured at a better health class, it's way worth it to do that versus wait and maybe be uninsurable at the worst, or get in a worse health class because of my VA disability. Because you have to, when you apply for life insurance, you have to they're going to ask you, have you ever applied for disability? And you're going to have to say yes if you have. But if you haven't done that yet, that's something that, you can go get that in place. A nice 20-year term policy, likely in the 7 figures when you're talking about life insurance. That's another topic, SGLI. We can actually touch on that as well. But SGLI is typically not enough. $500,000 it is now. So separating members are probably going to need more insurance than that when you're adding debt, present value of education and income loss or income replacement. They're probably going to need a 7-figure policy. So life insurance is a big one.
Yeah, I saw a thing on Reddit the other day. People were asking about life insurance policies, and the typical military-friendly ones: AFMA, AAFMAA, Navy Mutual, USAA, all came up. And one guy, I was surprised. So he got his right before he separated. It was, I think, a 30-year policy, and it was only $66 a month for $1 million for 30 years. So if life insurance isn't part of your financial game plan, it's definitely something that, like you said, you want to take care of before you separate and put in your VA disability claim. It's just going to be so much smoother and so much easier. And a lot of insurance policies that are specifically for the military are going to cover you while you're in active duty and cover you for those like wartime contingency coverages as well. So you're covering yourself while you're in active duty. You're covering yourself, after you leave, and for the right person, a term policy that covers you, until you can start tapping into your retirement accounts, or just covers you for, it depends on the situation, but let's say that you're planning on early retirement at 44 with your military pension. Maybe you just want a little bit of coverage from when your military retirement to when you can access your retirement funds in the TSP. So it's going to depend, but you can certainly potentially save hundreds or even thousands of dollars by locking in a life insurance policy before you separate. So I think that's a really good point. And that's actually something I didn't really look at. I had my SGLI. I was happy with that while I was on active duty. And when I went to separate, it just wasn't in my cross check. I didn't apply for any. And I still haven't taken care of that box to check in my financial game plan.
You better get on that. Erik, you mentioned that SGLI might not be enough for some people, and you mentioned it's going up to $500,000 this month here of March of 2023. How do you know if $500,000 or SGLI, whatever amount they choose under $500,000, is enough? Do you have any tips on how to determine if that's enough coverage for our listener?
Yeah. So generally, life insurance is to replace financial loss or income loss. So a good way to add up maybe how much life insurance might be for you, take whatever income you need to replace or expenses that you need to replace, call it $5,000 a month. That would be $60,000 a year. Multiply that by 20. Now I have to do the math because I put myself in this hole. What is that?
1.2 million.
1.2.
So 1.2 million. Yeah, 12. Yeah, 1.2 million. And then depending on your situation, you might, let's say you have 3 kids and you want to pay for all of them to go to college. Maybe you want to take the present value of that education. You can look up a present value calculator, NPV calculator, and try to pull that number. And then maybe the present value, if you want to have your debts paid off, if you were to pass away, leave your spouse with no mortgage, like maybe you add that in as well. So that's kind of how you ballpark and get into a number of the insurance that you might need. And again, like for a separating member, a transitioning member, doing that, thinking like, okay, 3 years from now, even like, because that's like me. I'm speaking for me right now. Like I don't have any kids, but 3 years from now, I probably will. So I'm thinking down the road, hey, what will I need the next 20 years? Even not just the numbers now. What are the numbers 3-4 years from now?
Yeah.
Because I'm about to go down that separation funnel, and things could change with via disability claims and all that. And I will add as well, Spencer hit on it, like term insurance going to be the way to go for most people. Don't let the guy in your LinkedIn DMs sell you whole life insurance. That's not cool. So yeah, I had a guy. So it's funny I say that. I had a guy in my LinkedIn DMs like the last 3 weeks, and his tagline is literally like, I help transitioning service members create generational wealth with creative strategies or something like that. And he's hit me up like 7 times, and he just won't even look at my profile and see what I do. But he keeps hitting me up and, hey, do you want to talk? And anyways, so that's the kind of thing that motivates me to like help transitioning members. And part of why that's something I'm starting to offer is like a one-time transition plan to give people like good advice and not try to sell them products.
Yeah, I like the concept of that transitional financial game plan that you're developing for people. So what are some of the main points that you want to cover with people with that game plan?
Yeah. So another one in that same lane would be disability insurance, something that people don't really think about and isn't really talked about at all, especially in the military, because we don't really have to worry about that. We're kind of covered by the VA, right, in case of disability. But on the outside, that's not the case. And if you're going to go be an entrepreneur like me, my biggest risk right now is all the income that I haven't earned, right? I have a lot of liabilities in my life to pay for and a lot of income out there to earn. So that's kind of the thing that I need to protect most. If I'm not alive, I need life insurance. If I'm disabled and can't work, which is statistically way more likely, I need disability insurance. So that's also something that I'm pursuing right now personally. If you were going to go work for Amazon, they probably have a great disability insurance policy, group disability policy. I'm not going to work for Amazon, so I'm going to go get a private policy. So that's kind of another way to think about it too. I think a private policy is going to be more expensive, but would be kind of the safe route to go in terms of protecting future income. Another one is TSP. That's not time sensitive. You can make that decision anytime, but rolling that over to an IRA or keeping it in the TSP, kind of a personal decision, to be honest. I see that one. Do you have other plans with that money? Like, do you want to go make your own investing decisions outside of the 5 funds that they offer or the life cycle fund? It just depends on what you're going to go do. I think keeping investing costs low. What is it? Spencer says LADS, low, automatic, diversified, simple. Did I get it? Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. I'm all about that. The TSP certainly does that. You can do that really well in an IRA as well with a rollover. So me personally, I'm probably going to roll mine over just to have my assets in one spot. But I will keep $50 in the TSP to maintain access to that account in case I want to roll money back in to use like the G fund someday. If it's just paying great rates or something like that, I just want to keep my account open. That'll keep it open as long as I have somewhat of a balance in there.
That's an interesting strategy. Yeah, I haven't considered that. Most people that talk about rolling money out of their TSP, they're like, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this, especially with the new website redesign. What was it, a year or two ago? I check my TSP once a year now because it's so frustrating to use that website. But that's a great strategy. I hadn't heard of that before, where you just kind of leave a low balance in there because, that's right. Access to the G fund, you don't want to lose that. I mean, it's a very unique fund. It provides, no loss of principal protection, basically, with those special treasury bills that are only issued to the TSP from the US government. So it's an interesting strategy to keep that alive. I like that. I hadn't thought about that before. One thing that you did talk about there about rolling the TSP over to an IRA potentially, or maybe if you have a really good 401k with a future employer, that could be an option too. If you're self-employed, maybe a solo 401k, or I'm not actually sure if you can roll it into a SEP IRA, but that would be
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, probably not. But the solo 401k, you could roll the TSP over to that. So again, and it just kind of depends. I've left my TSP there. Part of me is like, I do like consolidating accounts and closing accounts. But at the same time, it's like, I can't touch that money until 59 and a half. And so maybe I just leave it there. And then I think it also is kind of like this like grand strategy in my head of like watching compounding interest in like in real time as this account, which when I left the service was about $300,000. I mean, over 20 years, that should be, 1.2 million if it doubles twice. It would be kind of interesting, I think, from a real world example of just leaving the money there and seeing, how much it grows from when I left the service at, 34 years old to when I can access the funds, 20 years later, 25 years later. One thing that you've been working on, Erik, is this BLUF Finance. I think is it blufffinance.com? Is that right?
Yep.
What are you doing there? It's an interesting concept.
Yeah. So the idea behind that, like I've got the financial planning firm and I do fee-only planning, right? I don't sell products. I do a flat fee, but there's kind of like a minimum at which you have to charge someone to do it profitably in this business. You can only handle so many clients. And so kind of like standard industry-wide minimums are anywhere from maybe $2,000 to $3,000 a year. So I have a few military clients. Not all my clients are military, but I kind of have just seen like, I'm friends with a lot of military, obviously. And I've just talked to people and seen that like most people aren't running out to hire a financial planner for a couple of reasons, right? Military are usually do-it-yourselfers. Their situation isn't necessarily as complex as somebody who works for Amazon. Under certain ranks, they don't make 6 figures, so they're not probably going to pay somebody $3,000 a year. They don't have, large investment portfolios for someone to go manage. Like for so many reasons, they don't fit that traditional financial advisor model. So the idea with BLUF is to bring the value of an advisor to military members for much lower costs. So right now it's $19 a month for anybody who signs up for the first year, just trying to get people signed up and deliver as much value as I can. But what it offers is a course, military finance course. I think there's 37 lessons. It's over 4 hours of content. I'm going through every financial planning area, exactly how it pertains to military, an instructional video, with resources. Hey, go here. Here's how you calculate your life insurance. Here's how you go get more. Ongoing monitoring with a financial monitoring app called Elements that I use with private clients. Benchmarking of those elements. So the Elements app tracks like savings rate, debt rate, all kinds of financial ratios. So I would like to benchmark kind of the community. Hey, if you're an O3, you make 100 grand, like this is how much you should be saving on average based on the community. We kind of have some heuristics to say, hey, I'm doing good right now, because projections and Monte Carlo simulations, like they don't really tell you anything. Like 30 years from now that's so far off, but like, how are you doing right now? Are you doing good? Or maybe how do you improve? And then, a library of checklists that I've got in there to help with different financial planning situations. And then a Q&A. I'm doing an asynchronous office hours. So I'll take questions throughout the month and kind of send out a Zoom answering those questions for the benefit of the group. And then one-on-one help when you need it. If you're PCSing, buying a house, like something super complex, maybe you need to just have like a one-on-one for like an hour. That would be just at like an hourly rate. That's kind of BLUF and what I'm doing with that. Wrapped up, again, trying to deliver as much value as I can, not a one-on-one situation, but more of a one-to-many for a fraction of the cost. So, lots of free resources out there, Facebook groups, Military Money Manual, awesome resource. I'm a huge fan. I got the book, I got it all. And then you've got like financial advisors that are expensive and all this, and there's really like nothing in between. So I'm kind of trying to shoot for that gap right here for someone that needs a little bit more structure, potentially, but doesn't want to stretch all the way to that thousands of dollars per year for an advisor.
I think that's a really awesome model, Eric. I hope it works out really well for you and your clients, because there is that huge divide between people maybe with not quite the income to pay for an advisor, or they just kind of want a sanity check sometimes. Like, I've been doing it myself. I'm doing pretty good, but I just want to see if I could be doing it a little bit better or if I could optimize it all. So I think there's something there with your idea. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, I frequently see the Reddit for military finance, people put finance checks up where they're like, okay, like here's my situation. I'm an E4. I've got $50,000 in savings. This is my TSP. I'm saving this much a month. And most of the time people are like, dude, you're killing it. Are you just trying to collect, like points, useless Reddit points for this post? Because most of the people I see on there, like they're doing way better than the average bear, right? The average Joe sailor or Joe soldier is living paycheck to paycheck. And that's a tough situation to be in. And so I do applaud what you're trying to do, because like at the low end of the spectrum, you can go and buy my book. I think the Audible is like $5 right now or something if you want to listen to it, or you can get the ebook for $10 on Amazon. And then at the high end, you've got, Military Financial Planning Association, where you can go and hire, advisors who are usually former military themselves, and they are all, I think all of them are CFP designated. So I really applaud what you're doing with this BLUF finance concept, and I hope that you get some traction from it. I think having the community too, and just being able to, because one thing that I found with my website and also moderating the Reddit military finance is 99% of situations are the same, right? Same problems. Everybody's going through the same thing. You just need that human connection of, how do I invest my TSP? Well, probably a life cycle fund. That's probably the right answer. How much should I put in my TSP? Well, get your match. And then beyond that, it's when do you want to be financially independent, right? So answering those questions over and over again, you begin to develop, kind of the template of, okay, read this, or if you have a question, check here first. And then I'm happy to, have that one-on-one interaction for more complex topics. One thing that I've been seeing a lot recently is military spouse tax residency questions. And this is in flux too, because recent change to the Military Spouse Residency Relief Act and the CRA, Service Members Civil Relief Act, where, and Jamie, actually, you're going through this personally, where depending on how the IRS interprets the law, and they still haven't come out with their final ruling yet, but potentially even side hustle income of a military service member would be taxable in the state that they designate, which could be either their state that they joined the military in, a state that they've declared residency in, or a state that the spouse has declared residency in. So that opens up a whole new ballgame of opportunities, both for the military entrepreneur, but also for military spouses that work, while they follow their service member around the world. So I think, having a community like with BLUF Finance, that'd be great, where people can come in and say, hey, we lived in 3 different states this year. My wife worked in 4 different states. How do I solve this tax thing? And you just say, well, hopefully in the next couple of months, the IRS gives a ruling and they say, guess what? you lived in Texas, you can all be Texas residents and there's no state income tax to worry about.
That's a really interesting one too for me personally, I can say. So the way I've read the rules are that, and this isn't tax advice, I'm not a CPA, disclaimer, but the way I've read the rules are that as a military member, your side hustle income is not SCRA exempt. So you're not going to get a state tax break on that side hustle income while you're active duty. So like I'm in Ohio, I'm Wyoming for my W-2 income from my LES, but my business income through September 30th will be taxed in Ohio. However, on October 1st, I'm then a military spouse. So then I get to claim Texas, which is my wife's state. And then my side hustle or my business income is tax exempt for state taxes. So that's kind of an interesting, I might have to talk with a CPA this year, to be honest. So
Yeah, please come back on the show. Come back on when you get an answer because I mean, in my situation, there's no point in us doing LLC income for my wife's like nutrition coaching and personal fitness stuff that she does if she can do it as a independent contractor, like 1099 stuff, and then it's not taxed with this new rule update. So it'll be really interesting to see how states and the IRS clarify the new law.
And I think it really drives home the point too, that in the right situation, it can make sense to hire some expert help. And one thing that I've learned working with CPAs are they don't know everything. And even the really good ones that you pay a lot of money for, they don't necessarily know everything. But thankfully, irs.gov is actually a pretty good resource, and Google too, as long as you're using a reputable source. Once you have the links on Google. I haven't used ChatGPT yet for my my tax advice, but I'm sure that's coming in the next year or two.
Oh yeah.
But with using the power of Google plus irs.gov, it's not intuitive, but you can read through the legislation and the rules and the regulations, and you can at least present it to your CPA and say, hey, look, I know you said this, but have you read this? And frankly, a lot of times they haven't, just because the tax code is so complex and they might not have a lot of military clients. So I think it's really important both for, when you're hiring advisors, you want to make sure that they understand the military lifestyle. And that can be either they were former military themselves or they have a lot of military clients and they understand the complexities of military service. But also, don't make it overcomplicated, right? With the Military Spouse Residency Relief Act, I know it's changed this year in 2023, but in the previous year, it was very clear what military spouses could do. They could either declare their own state of residency, their spouse's state of residency, or the state that they were currently in. And with those options, right, there's a pretty good chance that maybe one of those states would have been a no state income tax state. And so there was an opportunity there if spouses were making income from working a job, whether it was side income or full-time work, that they would be able to skip paying the state income tax legally based on the Military Spouse Residency Relief Act. Okay, Eric, so a little detour there talking about hiring experts and hiring advisors that know your military situation. But I want to circle back to transitioning out of the military. Selling leave versus taking terminal leave. What are your thoughts on that? I know it's a controversial topic and everybody thinks they have the right answer.
Yeah, it kind of is. I think the conventional wisdom is if you've got 60 days, like you just take terminal. I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but that's kind of like everyone assumes like, oh, you just build up your bank and you just take it. But I don't know if the answer is really sell it or take terminal. I think there's a third option that may be optimal for folks, and I think is certainly optimal for me, which is to take leave during the weeks, and not on weekends, on family days, and then maybe you're selling the balance at the end. I just, I did a post on this recently. I see terminal leave and taking leave because if you take 60 days, odds are like we've got a family day every 4 weeks or something like that. Odds are you're going to be taking it over a couple family days at least and long 4-day weekends. I'm not going to give away those days for free. So I'd rather just take my days off than that terminal leave. But again, I think it depends on what you're doing. So for me, I'm going to start working from home in October. And my wife, we're not moving. We're not starting a new life anywhere. So that's a kind of a different scenario, I think, than some people have. Whereas others are maybe starting a new life, leaving. Maybe they're going on the crazy trip to Europe for 30 days that they always wanted to take, but couldn't because they had a really intense job. Whereas me, I've got a 9 to 5. I don't work weekends. So pretty easy for me to just use my leave optimally and just slowly transition out instead of this long block of sit at home and terminal leave.
Yeah. So in my example last year, I kind of ran the numbers as well. And I did the crazy thing where you just move overseas and travel a whole bunch. So for me, it made sense where I was like, well, if I take 60 days of terminal leave, I could be collecting a paycheck that whole time. I'm collecting Hawaii BAH and I'm gone, right? I'm just out of here. So I think that it was really dependent on the scenario. If you have like a really good job lined up, like right now, a lot of our buddies in the Air Force are pilots, right? And they might have a job offer from United, American, Delta. And the sooner they start, the higher the line number they're going to get, and the sooner that they're going to build seniority at that airline. So it might make sense for someone if they've got 2 or 3 months of leave built up. It might make sense to set a terminal leave date 2 or 3 months before they separate and go start that job. And now they're pulling in both the military paycheck and they're starting to pull in the civilian airline paycheck. And I know one thing that, when you start these civilian jobs, a lot of times, like the first paycheck is literally like a physical paycheck and you have to wait for it to come in the mail and then you have to go cash it. And the direct deposit doesn't kick in for a couple weeks. So it can be, like you were saying, when you're setting up to transition out of the military, cash flow is very important. And like we've talked a lot on the podcast, having savings, having cash set aside is always going to benefit you. And if you know that you have a transition coming up, that's the time to start building those cash reserves. That's the time to start setting that money aside every paycheck and making sure that you're going to have either, savings for specific reasons, right? Maybe you have to move and you need a first month's rent and a security deposit on the next place you're going to rent, or maybe you need a down payment for a new house. We could talk about VA loans, which maybe you won't need a down payment on a new house, thanks to a lot of the benefits of the VA loan. But you might not have a specific reason to be saving. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be saving, though, because it's amazing how fast expenses add up and how quickly, we had $10,000 saved, but oh man, like it's 4 weeks after separation and we burned through 6,000 of that, 7,000 of it. And it's very quickly getting to the point where it's like, man, I need to start it. If you didn't have a job lined up already, now's the time that you have to go get one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really hit the nail on the head, especially with moving and maybe buying a new house and the VA loan and saving for a down payment. You gave me an opening there, so I will take it because I love talking about the VA loan. So the VA loan, obviously an awesome benefit, but in especially today's interest rate environment, just defaulting to that 0% down is not necessarily always your best decision. It depends on lots of factors. How long are you going to stay in the house and all kinds of stuff, like what your budget is. And there's a lot that goes into it for each personal situation. But I do see most friends of mine and people I talk to are just like, oh, I'm going to do the VA and 0% down. They don't really know there's a funding fee because it just gets rolled into the mortgage. And then they don't really think about, especially current interest rates. It was a different world 18 months ago. But for me, like every dollar I put down on a house, I get to avoid 6% interest or whatever that interest rate is right now. So that's kind of a win that I'm going to take to the bank personally. Everyone's situation is a little bit different, but that's just something that I think deserves consideration for anybody in the military, but definitely transitioning service members. And another couple topics I'll just hit on quickly for transitioning members that I think are important are like your new benefits package. I'll use the example Amazon. They're going to probably have all kinds of stuff that you've never seen, like a health plan and HSA and an FSA and all this stuff that you probably have never had an option. So educating yourself on that. Tax withholdings, those will probably be a little bit jacked up in the year that you get out because you're going to start in a new pay system and have to make proper elections there saying that you're married and you got 3 kids or whatever it is. And then they don't have any historical record on you. So your withholdings are likely going to be jacked up. So doing some sort of tax projection and backing into maybe a good withholding number would be a good idea there. And then like miscellaneous fringe benefits, credit cards, right? Keep those. Like you guys definitely talk about that. People like years out, not getting charged cards, not getting charged for those Amex and Sapphire and all that. So that's one where like, I'm going to keep those. I've got my Chase Freedom that I'm going to keep forever. no matter what. But like I've got all these other cards that like I'm just going to hang on to those until they start charging me. So that's another one I think, or like an Epic Pass. I just came back from skiing in Breckenridge. So I'm going to go get my Epic Pass as soon as I can before I separate, because that's another one I can extend like another year instead of getting kicked to the veteran pass, which is like $400 more.
Nice.
And then last one I would just throw in there is reserves or Air National Guard, like run the numbers and see if it's for you. That's another common thing I hear. Like I'm separating and after 5.5 years of service and everyone's like, oh, go to the reserves, no brainer, like healthcare. And I'm just like, well, I ran the numbers on an hourly basis. I'm 14 and a half good years from retirement. And I've just done the math and it's not for me personally. It makes more sense, I think, as you get deeper into service, because you've got all this built up time and all these points, and you only have to do 8 or 5 or 3 years or whatever it is to get to that pension and healthcare, TRICARE for life and all that. But for me personally, didn't really make sense when I ran the numbers.
So Eric, you mentioned travel hacking and credit cards there. You're going to have the awesome benefit of being a military dependent, like you mentioned earlier. So you should have a really nice setup on your credit card game. But can you give us a little glimpse into your travel hacking experience and what you guys have done there, how much you've gotten into it, and any insight you have or tips?
Yeah, for sure. I've got I don't know if you guys told me to get this on your website, but I've got my little book, my credit card book. So this thing's great. My wife was just flipping through this today and she's like, this is ridiculous. I need to pay more attention. But yeah, I went pretty hard.
You were all three holding up the exact same portfolio from Amazon that stores all of our credit cards. I have black. I can't tell. Eric has blue, but it's like that exact same one.
I've got blue. Yeah.
I think it's originally for baseball cards, maybe, or business cards, but it's perfect for keeping track of the credit cards. It's funny, Eric. My wife says the same thing where she'll find it somewhere and she'll be like, "These are all in my name," and I'm like, "You told me I could open these."
Yeah,
sure she did. Yeah,
it's pretty. Yeah, my wife will be. She's looking for a card like last week to go pay for something. She's like, "Where did this card go?" I'm like, "You got a brand new one. I gave you the Amex Reserve or whichever, the purple one, whichever one we're on. Use that one. We're rotating here. We're on a program." So, but we went pretty hard. I went pretty hard on it out of the academy. I think I found your guys' God, it was 5 years ago. I think I was on your website though and went pretty into it. And then kind of, I don't know if I hit a limit, but I kind of went through a gap. I think we were just trying to like do the companion pass. That's what it was for Southwest.
Oh yeah.
Just were like zoned in on that. And then we moved to Ohio and now Southwest is like not great here. I've kind of opened my mind back up and like the last 6 months been like dialed in on your guys' site, which I highly recommend to like anyone I talk to that is interested in travel hacking. So we're rotating through just kind of like the batting order of cards. We're both active duty. So like I get a card, I add her to it. We hit the sign up bonus. I refer her. It's like the carousel that goes round and round. That's kind of what we're doing right now is we've got maybe 15 cards or so and just getting those sign up bonuses and going for those. We don't maximize every spend. I don't know if you guys do that. I know you guys talk about the sign up bonuses being kind of the best bang for your buck. But another thing I've done, like when I get a new card, so I've got the book, right? And then I use YNAB. So I add in there and then each statement gets auto pay, full statement. I set that up right away. And then I've got like a OneNote where I keep like which one we're focused on right now. And then I use the Points Guy app. I don't know if you guys have recommended this, but that's one that I found on, I don't even know how I stumbled upon it, but a good way to like track. I've got Delta and United and all these different points accounts that you can see them all in one spot, which is kind of cool.
Except for American Airlines. Nice. They sued him for.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, the American was like, no one else can show our points, but
boy,
yeah,
that's why it doesn't link.
There's some interesting stuff there. A lot of good stuff we could dig into travel hacking. The one other question I wanted to ask, if someone is feeling kind of maybe overwhelmed or these topics are way more advanced than where I'm at or where my family's financial journey is right now, what are kind of the basic beginning steps that you give to military service members or clients that you talk to get them started if they feel like they're ready to make a bigger step with their finances, but they don't maybe know where to start, or maybe they are living paycheck to paycheck and just reach out for help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So tracking your spending is huge. I don't care if you make $1 million or $1 a year, like being intentional with your money. I think you guys had Jesse on from YNAB.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm using YNAB. It's from that episode. But that's something that he talked about that I love. And I think that applies to everyone. being intentional, knowing where that money's going is huge, especially for those that are in maybe worse financial situations and you've got consumer debt or whatever it may be. So knowing where your money's going, like ground zero. And then after that, kind of going through that financial order of operations, paying off that higher interest debt, getting to obviously a TSP match as a non-negotiable for military members, and then moving on to things like the Roth IRA, increasing that TSP. And then, when it comes to down payments on houses, if that's something that you aspire to be a homeowner, that's something that is definitely in that order somewhere. But I think just knowing where your money's going, spending less than you earn, and investing the difference. Like I think Jeremy from Personal Finance Club, who I'm a huge fan of, says that really well. And I love to repeat that because it's such a great mantra. But that's the basics. And if you do that, you're going to be really well off. There's all of these other kinds of tax planning stuff we can talk about and all this stuff. But like if you just do that, you're going to be better than 95% of people. And then, getting proper insurance in place, certainly important. We talked a little bit about life insurance, estate documents, something that I talk about that nobody has done, to be honest. Most people I talk to don't have a will. And even the ones that have kids, they just haven't gotten it done. It's just nobody likes thinking about dying or talking about dying, but we're all going to do it. So probably something that you should prepare for. But those are some of the basics. I would say I think Spencer says it too, just keeping everything simple, keeping investing simple. You don't need to go run out and get the next hot stock or the next hot mutual fund or financial product. Just focusing on spending less than you earn, investing the difference, and just figure out ways to increase that delta.
Nice.
Awesome points there, Eric. I couldn't agree more. It's personal finance is very simple, but not easy, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. But I think a lot of people don't realize how simple it could be. And honestly, once you kind of set up the system and you put on autopilot, in my mind, it's like, okay, you've solved the money part of life now. Now you've freed up your time and you realize like, okay, now I got to solve the relationship part of my life. I got to solve the health part of my life, the fitness. And all that you do once you solve the money part of your life is you've just bought yourself more hours of every day to solve all the other problems in life. And the problems never go away, right? You're always going to have challenges. You're always going to have interesting problems to solve. In fact, if you can get to the point where you're bored, like just enjoy that for a little bit. But for most people, they never solve the money thing. And so then that's just one more thing that sucks away all their hours of the day. But just like you said, I mean, if you can spend the less than you earn and invest the difference early and often, just like Jeremy Schneider from Personal Finance Club says, then that's right there. You're going to put yourself ahead of 95% of the American population. And now you have a couple more hours in your day that you can go out and you can say, okay, what should my TSP allocation be? And you might realize that, well, if I can do maybe 1,000 hours of research and come up with like the exact optimal balance of international and US stocks and maybe get a 0.1% return differential over the next 30 years, or I can just put in a life cycle fund and move on with my day. And now I have all this time to figure out all the other interesting problems of life. And for you, me, and Jamie, who are, spreadsheet guys, sometimes that's hard, right? Because we're like, no, like, look at the net present value of this. And most people out there, I mean, maybe a lot of people listening to this podcast care about that stuff, but most people out there don't, right? They want to solve their money problems and then move on to the next thing. And that's the great thing about personal finance is even if you can just dip your toe in the water, right? Even if you just go follow Personal Finance Club on Instagram and look at a couple of his Instagram posts. Just reading those and you're ahead of 80% of the American population. And if you can set up your finances in such a way as to emulate, the principles of spending less than you earn and investing the difference into low-cost index funds, like we talked about earlier, the LAD system, low-cost, automatic, diversified, and simple. If you can just do that, you're going to buy yourself so much time and so much freedom. And if you can stick to that program, it's amazing how much progress you can make in a year. And I think it's even more amazing how much progress you can make in 10 years. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is that when they catch the personal finance bug, I know like for me, my wife and I had $100,000 of student loan debt. And it took us 5 years to chip away at that. But by the time we were done with that, we had ingrained so many habits of personal finance. We had set up such a good system that as our income, especially in the military, where your income, grows almost automatically because you're getting promotions, you're getting time in service pay increases, you're getting, annual pay increases like the military did this year in 2023. As time goes on, you just discover, okay, I'm getting more, the fire hose of income is starting to turn on, and you're like, okay, and I have all these buckets to catch it and to invest it. And then guess what? Those buckets start to grow because of compounding interest. And then before you know it, you paid off your student loan debt 5 years ago, but your net worth has increased. It took you 5 years to pay off $100,000 of debt, but 5 years after that, your net worth isn't $100,000. It's probably $200,000 or $300,000. It just grows exponentially. And it's hard in the moment to recognize that and to see that and to realize that these small habits compounded over long periods of time end up resulting in these huge results. And the difference between sticking with it for a year and sticking with it for 10 years isn't a 10x result. It's usually like a 100x or a 1000x result.
You nailed that on the head, Spencer. You said something that I think really resonated with me, and a point I wanted to bring up was, I think you, me, and Jamie, from what I can tell, we're all kind of like spreadsheet guys. We're quants, is what they call them, right? We're econs, I think was another term. But I think moving beyond the numbers is also important. So whether you're talking about like spending, like aligning your values with your spending, that's something I think you can do really well with YNAB, or even just deciding how much to put away in a TSP or your Roth IRA or whatever it may be. Like, what I'm getting at is you don't want to be the guy with $20 million when you're 80 years old and you worked till you're 65, or you didn't take those trips, or you didn't align your life with your money, right? Money is just a tool. It's a means to an end. And that's something that I think I've learned in the last few years, like getting into personal finance and being a financial planner. I thought everything, like when I started this, I was like, everything's in a spreadsheet and I can perfectly build this little cell that leads to this cell, and I can optimize anyone's financial life. And what I realized is life isn't like that. Everyone's situation is different, and aligning your values and goals and your lifestyle with your money is important and definitely different in every situation. So, and that brings up a great book recommendation, Die with Zero. You guys have talked about this on the pod before.
Yeah.
But I read that, I don't know, 5 months ago, and I am such a fan of that book. I'll probably reread it every year because it's such a good reinforcement of living purposefully and doing that, in concert with money decisions. So I've definitely used some of those concepts in our own financial situation. Like, we don't need to put X amount of dollars per year away into retirement accounts if we've already saved a good amount. Like, we can start maybe saving for our dream house. We want to move to Colorado Springs. So that's something like, we're starting to divert funds towards that, and not necessarily like all of our excess surplus towards retirement. Because it's like, I don't want to be that guy who regretted I didn't get to live in the house I wanted to, or my kids didn't get to go on the ski vacation. I want to, align my life with my money.
Excellent points. Yeah, I couldn't agree more there, Eric. We're big fans of the book Die with Zero on the podcast. I don't think we mention it every episode, Jamie.
Yeah,
but
pretty close.
I think
pretty close.
it's pretty close.
We got to up our influencer game. I feel like it should be like, and don't forget to go to diewithzero.com/Jamie20 for a 20% discount. We don't, that's not a real link, by the way. We don't have that, but we should, because we keep talking about it.
We should, yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. One of the things you mentioned there, Eric, was your spending aligning with your values. And so one thing for my family, going through 12 years of active duty service, is we never really bought furniture. Every time we would get to a new duty station, we'd have some things that we had PCS'd with, and maybe we'd go to like a thrift shop if we needed like a dining room table, or if we needed a couch, we would go to IKEA. Well, when we went to leave Hawaii, we ended up selling or giving away like almost all of our furniture after our active duty service. And we kind of went out into civilian life without furniture. And we got through the last year fine, but now we're looking at buying a house and actually using a VA loan, which is going to be a great topic for a future podcast. But we're looking at buying furniture, and it's going to cost a lot of money, or what I think of as a lot of money. It's like $25,000 is not unreasonable for a dining room, a living room, and a couple bedrooms. And I was shocked when I saw those numbers, right? I was like, can we just go back to IKEA? And my wife was like, yes, we can. Like, we can do that. But is that what we want to do? Like, we literally haven't owned decent furniture for 12 years. Like, why not and we've diverted all of our money to our retirement accounts and all of this, all of this savings for our future selves. And it's just like Die with Zero says, like, when's the party? Like, when are you going to actually enjoy that? And if I spend $25,000 or even $50,000, which is absurd, right? It's like you could go buy a new car for that. If you end up spending that on furniture, but it lasts you for 10 years or 20 years. I mean, but the other part of that too is, what if you die in 5 years because you catch a disease that's not curable? And for the next 5 years, guess what? You really enjoy sitting on that couch, and it costs a lot of money. And yes, you could have put that, $25,000 into your spreadsheet and projected it out and been like, oh my gosh, that's going to be $1 million in 30 years. But guess what? We're not guaranteed to get that 30 years from now. So I think it's a balance. And I think having people like you, Erik, in your corner as a CFP, I think that's great that you're going out there and you recognize that, okay, I can do the numbers, but at the end of the day, like, this is somebody's life. This is somebody who's out there actually living this. And I think that's great that you've already developed that perspective. So you mentioned Die with Zero. You've also mentioned the $100 Startup. Do you have any other books that you would recommend? Let's say somebody's listening to the podcast, just got into the military, or maybe just commissioned, or even they've kind of caught the bug for personal finance and they want to become financially independent. Any book recommendations?
Absolutely. Like I said, love reading. I think you guys had me beat. I can't remember. One of you guys had like 70 books last year. That was impressive.
Yes. I'm behind this year. Not as good this year, but
yeah, I got to find you guys on Goodreads. But so Military Money Manual, got that in my hand right now. I do recommend that. That was a nice quick read. Really enjoyed that. Random Walk Down Wall Street by Burt Malkiel. Awesome book. One of the first I read on investing. Just really simple. Why low cost indexes are the way to go. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. One of the best behavioral finance books I think ever written. Millionaire Next Door, Thomas Stanley. Awesome study of millionaires and what they buy. And speaking of furniture, they buy used furniture and used cars and all that. Just a good kind of showing you what millionaires actually buy. Die with Zero, we talked about that. Just Keep Buying by Nick Majuli. I think that's how you say it, but really good book, just reinforcing good habits, kind of ignoring the broader financial news and events and all that, and just keep buying and you're going to be okay. The One Page Financial Plan by Carl Richards. I'm a huge fan of Carl Richards. He's kind of like a legend in the financial advisor, financial planner world. And then Unshakable by Tony Robbins. Some of the stuff that he's written is in the personal coaching, and his concerts and stuff are like fanatical. But this book is actually really good. It just talks about being prepared for the storm that's going to come, right? The recession, the downturn, whatever it may be, whatever that pandemic, whatever it may be, just being prepared mentally for that and staying invested. So just a lot of good books there to keep you focused and just invested for the future. And then I would also say either ignore the news or read good sources. I think that's important. Certainly for investing, you can probably ignore the news, but just in general, like if you're going to read the news, two sources I personally read and recommend are just central sources, Wall Street Journal, and then The Economist that I've been getting this year that I have really enjoyed, just some deeper world topics that have been some good weekend reading for me.
Those are great recommendations. I also majored in econ in college, so The Economist holds a special place in my heart. But every time I usually subscribe for a year at a time, and the magazines just stack up, and I'm just like, I feel so bad that like there's somebody spent all this time producing like 120-page magazine every week on this and going super in depth on these like global topics, and I'm just like ignoring it. So that's the reason I unsubscribe from The Economist, and then it takes me like 2 years, and then I resubscribe, and I feel guilty again.
Yeah, I just got back took a ski trip to Breck, and like on the plane back, I'm like on page 60 out of 85 or something, and like I thought I was doing okay, and then I checked the mail when I get back, and I was like, oh, got another issue, like I'm behind. So I had to finish this morning, and it's crazy how much content that is on a weekly basis. So certainly a good resource, I think.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of other things you mentioned. Random Walk Down Wall Street was also extremely influential for me and had a big influence on, kind of developing my LAD system of investing, where you just keep it low cost, automating, diversified, and simple. and just stick to the, your classic index funds. The other one is Jack Bogle's Common Sense Investing.
The little book on common sense investing.
That's it. Little book on common sense investing by Jack Bogle. And basically it just gets to the point, like being average in investing is the best case scenario. Like you just want to be average. You just want to get the average return, because that's what a market does is it takes the person who got the best return, basically took it from the person who got the worst return. And so if you can be in the middle of that bell curve, then you're going to do just fine. And that's what index funds allow you to do. Just keep buying. The author's website is ofdollarsanddata.com, which is a great website. I check it frequently. He's got some really in-depth personal finance and investing articles on there, but he takes a really big picture approach to it. And I think it fits into what you were saying about when it comes to investing. And I think actually this applies to so many things in life. Just don't check the news. Like anything that was published in the last month, year, you just don't need to read it. Let time, and I think this is addressed in either Derek Sivers, maybe 4,000 Weeks, where you let time basically be your, it's Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. You let time be your filter, right? So basically just you can say like, okay, I'm not going to read anything that was published less than a year ago. And then you can go and check, okay, what was a bestseller in 2021? Was it still a bestseller in 2022? If so, then maybe it's worth reading. If not, then you could probably skip it, right? Because it didn't hold up its value. It was specific to a moment in time. And that applies, if you go all the way back to, reading like Marcus Aurelius Meditations, that has been around for 2,000 years and people are still reading it because it still holds its value. And there's a reason that they keep publishing it, right? And so I think, having an information diet where you restrict yourself and and for me, I will admit I'm a little bit bad. I do have the New York Times subscription, which Amex Platinum pays for. I want to say it's primarily for Wordle, but no, I do actually check the headlines occasionally. And I think it can be fine as an investor if you can develop the fortitude to not react to it. And the most recent massive bear market that we had was March 2020 with the COVID pandemic. And if you were able to read those headlines and not make any investment decisions, or if you were able to throw more money into your accounts, then you were doing the right things at the right time. But if you were reading and you were panicking and you were making the wrong decisions, or you were pulling your money out, or you were selling, you missed a massive rally in 2020 and 2021. I think it's important that if you do read investing news, that you basically you have to be stoic about it. You can't react to it. You can't change your investment strategy, because CNBC says, have you considered crypto stocks? And you put all your money into crypto stocks and 2022 hits. And all of a sudden now you don't have any money left over to invest in crypto stocks. So great recommendation there. Tony Robbins, actually, I just picked up his, I think it's like seven money rules or something. He's an interesting guy because, I have this, I think kind of this like 90s and early 2000s conception of him as like a self-improvement guru type, but he's actually got some really good material out there and he's helped a lot of people. So I kind of reserve judgment on him. I really haven't gone too far down the Tony Robbins rabbit hole, but from kind of the surface level interactions that I've had with his content and his material, I think as long as you don't take it too seriously and go too far down the rabbit hole, there's a lot of value to be gleaned there.
So, Erik, as we bring this episode to a close, it's been really awesome. Where can people find you if they want to follow you? And what are kind of the things in the hopper next for what you're working on now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, posted there, interacting with people there. So definitely that's a spot. I've also got an Instagram account for BLUF Finance, which is a military-specific offering that I've just launched about a month ago to give the value of a financial advisor to military members at a much lower cost. We talked about that. Also working on a military transition plan, so a one-time plan. It's going to be actually a buy one, give one plan. So for every plan that I do for somebody, I will give a plan to an E4 or below. I've got a partnership with Warrior Transition Outdoors for that, which is a nonprofit focusing on helping transitioning veterans through family advocacy programs and outdoor experiences. So really excited about that. That just went live last week. those are the two kind of military specific offerings that I'm working on building up. And then just my main firm, Baskin Financial Planning, which is just baskinfp.com. That's kind of the main hub for me. And then the BLUF Finance website is just blufffinance.com. And then, like I said, the Instagram account that goes along with that. Maybe a podcast in the future. You guys kind of inspire me. So sometime this year, that might be coming up.
Well, we'd love to help you get that podcast launched. Maybe this can be your inaugural episode. So you're welcome to use
Love it.
Yeah. I really like what you're doing with kind of the buy one, get one financial transition plan there. I think that's an awesome service. I've often thought about how to do something similar with my site and my products where, there's for an E3 or an E4, spending $10 on a book might be tough, right? Like they can have a pretty tight budget. And so how do I get this information into the people who want its hands while still not devaluing it, right? Because people value things that they pay for. And part of how I've done that is basically my entire book you can find on my website. I think the entire contents of my book are scattered across my website. You have to read multiple pages, but it's there. And that's kind of my gift to those who want to go down the rabbit hole. But in the meantime, I think what you're doing with the buy one, get one that's an awesome strategy. And I think a lot of people will benefit from that. So thanks for doing that. Erik, thanks again for coming on the podcast. Had a great conversation, covered a lot of interesting topics, and wish you all the best with blufffinance.com and Baskin FP, BASKINFP.com is his financial planning site. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Spencer. Thanks, Jamie. It's a blast to have this conversation with you guys. I've been a longtime fan of the website and reader of the book and a listener of the podcast. So just fun to get on here and talk with you guys. It's just been a blast. So thanks for having me on.
If you found this episode valuable, the easiest way you can say thank you is by leaving us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to the podcast. Thanks for all the great reviews we've already received. If you have any questions or feedback, you can message us on Instagram at Military Money Manual or on email podcast@militarymoneymanual.com. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Military Money Manual podcast.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Hey guys and gals, Spencer here again. Before I let you go, I want to let you know about two things. First, my 100% free course. It's called the Ultimate Military Credit Cards course, and you can sign up today at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. I've been running this course for over 4 years now, and we just celebrated our 7,000th graduate. In this course, I walk you through an absolute beginner's guide to travel hacking and opening your first fee-waived credit cards in the military. Again, you can sign up today at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. It's 100% free, no spam, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Second, my book, The Military Money Manual, A Practical Guide to Financial Freedom, is available on my website and Amazon today. Head over to shop.militarymoneymanual.com, or if you want the Amazon version, search Military Money Manual. This is the book I wish someone had handed me on my first day in the military. In this book, I cover the exact money tactics and investment strategies I used on my path to achieve financial independence while I served in the U.S. Air Force. The book is the best personal finance book specifically for you, whether you're an active duty, guard, reserve, a military spouse, enlisted, or officer. Any ROTC or Academy cadet can benefit from the tactical and strategic advice I lay out in the book. But don't just take my word for it. Here's 2 reviews of the book. Ryan on Goodreads.com wrote, "The most comprehensive investing personal finance book specifically written for military members I've read so far. This book should be handed to every new LT at commissioning." Matt on Amazon said, "This book is incredibly straightforward, easy to understand, practical, and useful. This book should be on the Commandant's reading list." Thanks, Matt. If you're interested in the book, head over to my website, shop.militarymoneymanual.com. And podcast listeners can use promo code PODCAST to get a special discount on the ebook, audiobook, and hardcover book. You can find the audiobook on Audible, the ebook on Amazon Kindle, and the hardcover book on Amazon. Or again, head over to my website and use promo code PODCAST for a special discount
Thanks for listening.